is the Happy Scientist Podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happy scientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Happy Scientist podcast. This is the place to be if you want to become a happier, healthier and more productive scientist. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and with me, as always, is Mr. Kenneth Vogt, my friend, mentor, the Bitesize Bio team coach and the founder of the executive mentoring company Vera Claritas. Today and in all other Happy Scientist podcast episodes, you get to benefit from his words of wisdom to help you increase your performance, enjoyment and success in the lab and beyond. In this episode, we'll be discussing something that may be holding you back without you even knowing that it's doing it. That is, do you listen? So, Ken, let's hear what you have to say about listening.
All right. Now, I think most of us probably are surrounded by people that don't listen very well. And we'd love to fix that problem. But you know what? The only person you can fix this problem about is you. You have to work on you listening. And you will, by example, show that to others. Some of them will pick up on it and be benefited, and some of them won't. And there's nothing you can do about those folks. And you can't get fixated on all those other people that don't listen. And you can't use that as an excuse as to why you don't listen. So I guess the first question to ask would be, why listen? What's the point? And, you know, I think, Nick, you probably have encountered a lot of people that are very, very smart. And you might think that they think, like, why should I listen? I'm the smartest guy in the room. And if that may well be true. And this may be true of many of the listeners out there. You might be the smartest person in the room. Does that mean there's no value in you listening? Well, I mean, that's just not true. And if you look at the purpose of listening, it becomes clear. A lot of people feign listening, that is, they're hearing what's being said around them, but they're only doing it so that they can be prepared to reply. They're not actually listening. A person who's listening is striving to understand. Now, that doesn't mean that you lack understanding or that you're not as smart as the other people there. It's you're trying to understand what the other person is saying, what they're trying to communicate, what they're trying to get across. And that has nothing to do with how smart you are. Is understanding somebody, you know, if you're talking to a 3-year-old and they're talking in very, very simple English or whatever language they're speaking, sometimes it can be very hard and you have to put a great effort into listening. But are you doing it so you can give them a witty reply? Well, no, they're a 3-year-old. You're trying to figure out what they're talking about. So it's about understanding. And the fact is that no matter how educated you are or how erudite you are on whatever topic is under discussion, you need input. The reason you got erudite, the reason you are an expert at whatever you're an expert in, is because you got inputs from people that knew things. And in some cases, even got input from people that didn't know things, but they spurred questions that then you sought answers to, and it was worthwhile. Now, another thing that happens here is that in whatever we're doing, we're not doing it in a silo. It's a social environment, and it's funny to think of science as a social thing, but it is. There's a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation, and the fact is that those people around you, they are aching for somebody to listen to them. Listening is a fabulous opportunity for you. You know, listening becomes then a leadership quality. It becomes a charismatic quality, something that people are really looking for. So just the act of listening is useful for you. Even if you don't gain anything from what you hear, the fact that you are giving other people attention is very valuable to them. And that in turn causes you to build trust with them and credibility with them, because this is a person that doesn't just dismiss me. They care about what I have to say. And that's especially true if somebody has issues with self-esteem. If they look at you as an expert or as a leader or as as a boss in a work setting, and they realize this person's paying attention to me. This person is giving attention to what I'm saying. Wow, that's really, really valuable. So the other thing that happens to this is social interaction goes two ways. If you listen to other people, they're more likely to listen to you. And of course, we all want that. It's not just those other people that like to have people listen to them. We like to have people listen to us. So it's an opportunity to go first, but it's a valuable opportunity to go first because you're setting the agenda and you're showing people the way it's done. And you can then point out to people in a positive way, perhaps in certain settings, like, when you brought this and that up to me, remember, I listened to you. I really heard what you had to say. I gave you a chance to get out your whole point, and so I'd like you to do the same for me. So there's advantages then to listening. So I'll pause for a second there, Nick, and I'll listen to you. Do you have anything to offer about why we should listen?
Yeah, it's very wide. I mean, my immediate sort of reaction to that, listening again in a scientific setting, a scientific research setting, is there are, two sides to it. One is two sides to not listening, if you like. One is arrogance, is the opposite of that is being arrogant, and thinking that you know better than other people, which is again, you hit on it by saying that science is a social endeavor. It's about combining knowledge, and quite often you see people siloing themselves because they think that they either don't listen, they either think that their prevailing their view is the correct one, or they think that their group view, if there's two schools of thought, for example, on a particular topic, they think that their view is correct, so they don't listen to the other one. And again, that's a classic groupthink, and exactly against how science works. But you see it all the time. So one pitfall of not listening is that sort of trap of creating a silo, creating a place where the knowledge stops, the knowledge transfer stops. The other angle of that, apart from arrogance, is that science is all, in yourself, in the work you're doing. Listening is kind of the same as being open to input. And again, another pitfall is just not between you and other people, but between you and your work. Are you listening to the inputs you're receiving? Or are you, the results you're receiving, the results you're seeing in the field around you, or are you siloing yourself to that and creating putting yourself on a tangent which is further and further from the truth because you are fixated on the idea that you're right? That's two things that I have personally seen in scientists, in specific scientists, certain scientists, that are the direct results of not listening, and they are in complete opposition to what it means to be a scientist.
Right. So you mentioned a couple things that this triggered for me to not triggered is not the right word, that has meaning these days, that that prompted me to a few things. One is that listening is not just about hearing a person speak. There's a lot of things to listen to. There's data to listen to, and there's other kinds of inputs that we listen to. Sometimes there are other social inputs, and it might be a person's manner or their body language or other things. But there's a lot of input. There's the input of your education as an example, and the input of prevailing views on things, and that's a big deal. Now it's interesting. I had asked you the question, what do you have to say about why listen? but you spend a lot of time talking about why don't you listen. um, and by the way, that's great, because that's where I was headed next. And you arrogance is a beautiful thing to point out, and it is pervasive in science. And it's funny, I had written down a different word for that. I'd called it pridefulness, but the implication was the same thing. And
I think it's a bit mean to say it's prevailing in science. I think it's prevailing in society. It
okay,
really is. People just don't listen.
yeah, I don't mean to single out science. As only science has that prevailing problem, but science certainly has that prevailing problem, even as society does.
However, I know this is a slight tangent, but that is the whole idea of that's humanness is being arrogant, and the way that I see it is that being a scientist is like squashing down the human part of yourself and becoming the Spock part of yourself. You have to, and the arrogance, or the thinking you're right, or the lack of open-mindedness is part of the human part, not part of the Spock. Spock's really open-minded.
Yeah. Well, and the notion of prevailing attitudes. So let's say that you belong to the camp that is in the majority on some topic. Does that make you more right than the camp that's in the minority? Actually, no. We don't know for sure. When there are multiple prevailing views, it is quite possible that a minority view turns out to be the correct one. Now, I'm not arguing in favor of alternative facts and that kind of stuff. I mean, when we don't know for sure about something and there are multiple possibilities, it's important for us to listen to all possibilities and to weigh them all and to take them into consideration. Now, I'd like to dive in a little deeper into how is it we do this not listening thing. What do we do? What do we individually do when we're not listening? So, one of the things that happens is we have this voice in our own head, and we all have it, and it's talking to us all the time. And so somebody starts presenting their view that is different than the view that we are presently holding. So what happens? That voice in our own head starts getting louder and louder and louder, and it's trying to shout down this other person. And even though we're looking like we're listening, because we're not talking over them, and we're still present there, we're not doing something else, we're not listening, because the voice in our own head is just being too loud. Another thing the voice in your own head can do is be insistent. That is, it may not be shouting them down, as it were, but it might be just automatically dismissing them. Like, no, look, I'm right. I've checked this out. I'm certain about this. I've been an expert on this for a long time. They don't know anything, And so we're doing the anti-Spock thing there. We're not being open. And, being open to input is very, very valuable. Being closed to input will make you not listen. Now, it's possible you've had bad experiences with listening in the past. And maybe you listened to something and it hurt you. When I say hurt, I don't mean necessarily caused you physical harm, but in some way you found it really difficult to listen to that. Now, it might have been difficult because I'm going to look like a fool that if I change my position. It might be difficult in that I've held a position that I'm increasingly looking to believe as foolish now, and I hate to admit it. So we're worried about that kind of thing, or it could be something we really, really didn't want to hear. We're looking at the data and we can see that this experiment has failed, and we really, really, really didn't want it to fail. And so those are reasons why you might cut yourself off from listening. It's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to see that. So there's all these possible blocks of why you wouldn't listen. Another thing is you may stop listening to other people because you are so bothered that they're not listening to you. It's like, why should I give them the respect of attention when they won't do that for me? And we cut ourselves off from input because of that. Because now it becomes a personal thing. Now it's not even about what's being discussed. It's about the social interaction. but can we set the social interaction aside long enough to get the data that would be useful to us, to get the input, whatever it is we might want for that. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you haven't been a great listener in the past, you've probably had a lot of good reasons why. So don't beat yourself up about it. If you haven't been a great listener, you haven't been a great listener, so be it. The question is, do you want the advantages? Do you want the gains that come from being a good listener? If you do, well then you got to learn how to listen. And if you've not been a good listener in the past, it's because you don't know how. And I mean, that might be a little hard to hear. You might think, man, how is it possible that I don't know how to listen? I've got, I've moved up in the world so far, and I got so educated, and I got into the real world, and I'm in the real lab, and I did all that without listening. It's possible. And in fact, if you look around at the people that you work with or even work for, you might realize, wow, a lot of them did too, because they sure don't listen very good now, and probably that's not a new behavior for them. It's more likely if somebody is a listener, that somebody's good at listening, they've probably been a good listener. But if somebody's not listening, it might be a lifelong endeavor of not listening. So, how to become a good listener? This is just a tool. It's just a thing you learn, and it makes me think about the way Bitesize Bio works. You as a PhD scientist, you've gained a lot of education, you know about a lot of things, but Bitesize Bio, you just learn how to do things, how to do specific tasks that are useful in your scientific endeavor. Well, this is another thing like that. This is something that will be useful in your scientific endeavor, and that is how to listen. So I'm going to break it down to a two-step process. It's pretty straightforward, and it's simple but not easy, as simple things often are. Often simple things are hard because there's nowhere to hide. This is not a 19-step process where you can hide in being bogged down in this step or that step. It's pretty simple. It's going to be the setup and then the act. Okay, first you have to hear, next you have to listen. So let me differentiate between hearing and listening. So if we're going to put a definition to hear is to perceive with the ear the sound made by someone. Now that is narrowing it down to the simplest possible thing about hearing. That is, hearing words that are spoken to you. Obviously, hearing could be broadened out more to hearing data that's being presented or is being made available to you, or any other kind of input. But the point is, it's about perception. Something is going on in front of you. Some kind of input is happening. Are you going to perceive it? And it's up to you if you're going to perceive it or not. Hearing is perceiving. So if you want to perceive what somebody is saying to you, how do you do that? Well, there are some simple things. And when I say they're simple, again, they're going to be like, well, I knew that. Yeah, but do you find it hard to do? Are you willing to do it? So for instance, when somebody is speaking to you, do you look at them? Now, I'm sure we've all encountered folks that, man, they just won't look us in the eye. And I mean, they're looking everywhere but at you. They're bouncing all over the place. They're looking at their shoes. They're staring at their phone. They're looking over your head and out and beyond. It's a lack of engagement. If you really want to hear what somebody's saying, if you're having trouble hearing what they're saying, engage with them. Get more connected to them. Because it may be, all you're hearing is wah, 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 wah. It's because your attention is elsewhere. Bring your attention back to them. And, if there's a reason why you're having difficulty giving them your attention, well, that's something you can look at in yourself. Like, why don't I want to give this person attention? Why don't I want to look at them? Well, why do I want to focus on something other than them while they're talking? Those are all things you can take offline and look at in yourself and go, what is up with that? But in that moment, it's just look at them. And sometimes it's just a matter of practice. When you get used to the idea that I'm just gonna look at this person while they're talking. And it may be that, a person of the opposite sex, and we feel like, oh, it's a little intrusive, or like, well, they're not my significant other, so I shouldn't look at them like that. You're like, well, just look at them. Or they're my boss, and so it's disrespectful for me to look them in the eye. Or they are my subordinate, and I'll intimidate them if I look at them too hard. Well, we know the ways to do this without being, stepping over the line socially. It's not that hard. Now, I mean, if somebody's on the spectrum, I understand they may have difficulty with that, but most of us aren't. Most of us we can deal with the social environment, and so do it. Take a chance and look at that person, and you're going to find out it's not that bad. All the reasons you had in your head for not looking at someone as they were speaking are going to melt away when you just get more experience with it, or have it be more of your present common experience. Because you may well be able to look back at other times in your life when this wasn't an issue. You didn't have trouble looking that kindergarten teacher in the eye, and you didn't have trouble looking your friends and your buddies in the eye when you were a kid. You know, re-engage with that, because it's very, very valuable when it comes to listening. Now, once you're looking at somebody, they're talking. There's something else that's going on there that you can pay attention to, that you can parse. So, like, noting the tone of their voice, noting whether or not they're making eye contact with you, noting their body language. All that stuff is part of the communication, and you can gain so much from that. Now, what I don't want to recommend here is that don't try and translate what somebody is saying. In other words, don't take whatever they're saying and put it through some kind of filter and say, well, what they're really saying is this other thing. And if that sounds a little murky to you, we're gonna have something in the show notes that's a link to an article that's called "Why Communication Fails and How to Fix It," and it'll talk about what it is that we do when we're listening to people in that regard, that translation process, and how to parse it apart so that we don't fail in that regard. Now, I realize sometimes some translation is necessary. Sometimes people don't say what they mean. But generally speaking, we're getting enough information that we don't have to try and figure out what they mean. They're giving us enough clues in what they're saying, so give them a chance. And the next thing you can do with somebody like that is don't interrupt them. Let them get out what they have to say, because some folks it's a little bit of a struggle. So they may have to say it a couple of times before they get across exactly what they mean. And if we are impatient with them, or if we're trying to steer the conversation, we're never going to hear what it is they were trying to say. And we don't lose anything if they're bringing up a viewpoint that we think is just totally ridiculous and is just completely wrong. We are not harmed to hear it. So go ahead and hear it. And opposing viewpoints often have a few good points in them, even if we generally think they're wrong. So it's good to hear the foundation of their points, even if their ultimate conclusions are wrong. So, that's all part of that initial hearing process, is that truly opening ourselves up and making use of the social cues to get the most we can. So then we go to the next point of actually listening, and we'll give a definition to that. To listen is to give one's attention to sound. Now, as we've said here, that's just how we would apply it to hearing someone speak. But the notion is listening is just giving attention, whatever it is, whatever inputs are coming. So if you want to hear sound of someone speaking, you're very much benefited to remove other distracting sounds. Can you be in an environment where you can actually hear them talk? And I realize sometimes you're in a place where things are loud, or there's a lot of other people around, and you don't have that option. But sometimes you can say, could we step off to the side? Can we turn off this machine? So that you can not have that bothering you, and taking you away from what's right in front of you. It will allow you to listen better. Now, the sounds aren't the only distractions out there, and especially in the modern day world, devices are a pox on society. So if you really want to listen to somebody, put down your phone. I mean, it's tremendously rude to be trying to talk to somebody while you're holding your phone in front of your face. You're not looking at them. You're not listening to them. You're paying attention to that phone. And other people pick up on that too. I say pick up on it. It's not hard to pick up on. It's right in their face. It's rude. And we don't like it to be done to us. Well, if you're gonna truly commit to listening to other people, in that moment, put down your phone. It's gonna be there 30 seconds later. It's gonna be okay. You're not an emergency room doctor that's trying to save a patient's life, in the moment. So if it's important to hear this person, to listen to this person, give it the importance that it's due. And don't try and multitask. And we've talked about that before. We've had a whole episode on it. Looked at a very important study done by Stanford University. You're not going to do a good job listening if you're trying to do something else at the same time. Now, another thing you can do when you're listening to somebody is to help prompt them. So, give them encouraging sounds. And it might be, just words that we say or phrases we use like, like, really? Or, okay, go on. You're feeding them a reason to keep communicating to you. And, obviously it's got to be appropriate. We've all been in situations where somebody's done that in a placating way, or like they're treating us like we're a child, and we don't like that. But you can genuinely engage with somebody, and without interrupting them, the sounds you're making are to encourage them to keep talking instead of trying to talk over them. And so they're going to keep going. Some people, when you interrupt them, that'll just shut them down. They'll stop trying to communicate. Other people will get angry, and now the topic becomes something else. But either way, you lose out. You don't get to listen to what it is they were going to offer. Another thing you can do that is very useful when you're having a conversation with somebody and you want to listen to them is to repeat back to them what they said. And so let me give you an example of that. So, Nick, I'd like you to talk to me about something, and I will show you how I'll repeat back. Go ahead, Nick. Talk about something.
Oh, wow. Okay. I just got back from 2 days of holiday. I was at a theme park with my kids. I went on all of the roller coasters, and then the last one I went on, I hurt my back, so I'm getting old.
Oh boy. So you went on all the roller coasters with your kid, and you hurt your back?
Yep.
Well, look at that.
You listened.
Yeah, and then, so here's the thing. It might be you say something like, I paraphrased back to him what he said, but you could say back to them exactly what they said. So you went on all the roller coasters. Ah, that's right. And when you went on the roller coaster, you hurt your back. All right. When you say something back to somebody that they just said to you, for sure they're going to agree with you. Like, wow, this person really gets it, because they've said exactly the same thing. Now, sometimes they're going to say something that you don't agree with, but that doesn't mean you can't repeat it back to them, because you're not saying to them, I agree with you. You're saying, so what you're saying to me is you went on a roller coaster and as a result, it hurt your back. I might look at that and go, that didn't hurt your back. Your back was already hurt. You should have never got on the roller coaster, but I didn't say that to Nick. I just repeated back to him what he said to me, but then he knew I heard him. The other thing that does is it gives people a clue that, okay, this person is hearing the details that I'm offering, so I can offer more details safely, and they're going to give me the respect I deserve, and that's going to help you. So repeating back what somebody says to you, even when you don't agree with it, is very valuable when it comes to listening. They're going to give you more as a result. Another thing you can do is a technique called mirroring. And that is this is something you need to be physically present with somebody, but actually start doing the same gestures they're doing. If they rest their hand on their chin, you rest your hand on your chin. If they cross their arms, you cross your arms. If they lean back, you lean back. If they lean in, you lean in. If they smile, you smile. If they close their eyes, you close your eyes. It is amazing how much connection you both will feel in that setting if you start mirroring them. Now, I'm not talking about doing it in a mocking way. It's not about over accentuating what they're doing, but you'll see simple little things. They'll cross one hand over the other, or they'll make a fist, or they'll open their hand. As you do that kind of thing, that other person feels like this person is on the same page as me. And so it becomes easier for them to communicate. And what's good about that is if people often feel resistance to communication, so they're afraid to say what's really on their mind or to communicate what they really need to get across. Whereas if you make the environment such that they feel it's comfortable, they're going to be able to say whatever it is they need to say. And you'll be able to hear what needed to be heard. The advantage of that is even if it's something you wish wasn't so or wasn't fun to hear, you're better off hearing it than to not hear it if it's true, right? If it's what's really going on, you want to know what's really going on. So mirroring will help you create an environment where you're more likely to actually get the input that you need. Another thing that you can do is for the moment, suspend judgment. So, and I'm not telling you have to give up on judgment forever, although I wish you would. But I'm saying the baby step here is in the moment that the communication is happening, if you could just not judge right now, whatever they're saying, if you're in there again, if that voice in your head is going, this is wrong, this person's stupid, they're uninformed, they're clueless, they don't get it, you're not going to hear anything that comes across, let alone be able to listen to it. So if you just put that judgment on hold for a while, and back to Nick's reference to Spock, you can see Spock is really good at that. He can suspend judgment and just let the data roll in, no matter how much it jars what he already thought he knew. So you don't worry about it. You just take it in, and we'll worry about deciding what's valuable or not valuable later. And then finally, man, don't translate. And we've all been in that kind of situation where you say, what do you think about going to dinner? Oh, so you hate my cooking, is that right? Don't translate. They just asked if you wanted to go to dinner. They didn't make comment on your cooking. That wasn't what was going on. And we can waste so many cycles by translating things. And then they got to bother to deny it, and sometimes they have to defend against it. And now we're totally off track. We no longer have heard anything they had to say, let alone listen to it. It's just all gone. So, guard yourself from that translation. So those are the two simple steps: hear and then listen. And we've talked about why it's valuable to listen, and even why you might not have listened in the past. But it doesn't matter if you've not been good at this in the past. That's fine. Just start doing it. And because you know how you get good at things? Practice, practice, practice. That way you'll make it all the way to Carnegie Hall, as they say.
Very good. I mean, that's a really succinct, light shining session. How would you say that? Illuminating session on something that's actually really, really important, and it's almost like it's so prevalent in the world for people to not listen that it's almost accepted. But in science, it's doubly important. I mean, it's important on a personal level, triple it then. But it's important on a professional, interpersonal level. But it's also important at all different layers of scientific discourse, right up to, from discussing results in the lab, to discourse within your field, right out to if you're discipline touches in that, if your area touches on that right out to scientific discourse in society, it's more and more you just see people shutting off from the other side of the argument, and that's fine for humans, but not for Spock. Spock has to listen to even if they don't agree, Spock has to take the input, parse it, and decide whether it decide in how would you say it, in fairly, whether it decides, give it a fair hearing, and decide whether it should be assimilated in any way into the input, into the the conclusions. And again, you just see so many people shutting off so many scientists shutting off for non-logical reasons, like this particular thing aligns with their politics, or this is the extreme, and it's not every area that touches on that, but just to see that the people doing that is scientists doing that is worrying to me when you see that, because it's where else is that happening, that we're not listening to things, and we're missing truths, we're missing data, we're missing things that could literally save people's lives, because it's it didn't follow the norm, so we just dismissed it. But anyway, that was a bit
anywhere
of a soapbox,
in life that you do it is gonna be beneficial, and anywhere you're good at it will be transferable. So if you do a better job of listening to your kids, you're going to do a better job of listening at work. And if you do a better job of listening in the lab, you're going to do a better job of listening to your significant other, or to your friends or your community. And everywhere you get better at it will benefit every other place. So it's worth the effort.
It's definitely a habit. Have we done an episode on habits?
We did.
It's definitely a habit. And I don't know. Well, I'm not going to ask you your Yoda, but for me, one reason I don't listen is it's almost like I feel like I don't have time to do that. But that's a habit. That's a habit, kind of. Oh, I've got the next thing to do, and I'm focused on the next thing rather than now. And so that's a habit that, this episode has been a lesson to me. So
you can't multitask when it comes to listening, and you can't give the voice in your head first place when somebody else is talking. It's just how it is.
Well, that's a good rule, actually, and it's the habit of putting that rule into place, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, boy, there's a bunch of episodes to go back to look at. The episode on habits, the episode on multitasking. We should have an episode on the voice in your head. That'd be pretty good.
Oh, that would be good. That would be really good. The voice in my head would love that one. The voices. All right. Okay, I think that's a good time to break off before I get a bit more anymore. Right. So again, thanks, Ken. A really illuminating episode, as I said, and that's definitely one to ponder. And if you have any questions about, what Ken is talked about today, or any observations, we'd be happy to hear from you in our Facebook group, facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Club. And you can catch up on all those episodes that Ken mentioned earlier, the one about habits, the one about voices in their head isn't there, multitasking he said as well. You can see all of those at bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist, where all of these podcast episodes are listed. And again, remember, if you haven't done so already, episodes 1 to 9 are the fundamentals of, they will change your lives, 1 to 9, even more than the rest of the episodes. So have a look at those if you haven't looked at those already. So that just leaves us to sign off. I say again, thank you, Ken, for your words of wisdom, and
Thank you, Nick.
We will see you all at the next episode.
All right, bye now.
Bye.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.